My name is Alina Ainsworth, and at 28 years old, I thought I had my life pretty well figured out in Asheville, North Carolina. I had a cozy apartment downtown, a job I mostly enjoyed at a local bookstore, and a boyfriend named Mark who, for a while, seemed like the missing piece I'd been searching for. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. He made me feel seen, understood, and loved in a way I hadn't experienced before. Looking back, I realize it was a classic case of love bombing. He came on strong, showering me with affection and grand gestures that seemed too good to be true. In just the second month of dating, he whisked me away on his small boat to an uninhabited island. He had prepared a gourmet lunch, complete with limoncello, and we went diving. As if that wasn't enough, he found a beautiful, giant shell underwater and presented it to me as a token of his undying love. Shortly after that, he took me to his childhood home, shared stories of his deceased parents, and gave me his old toy, claiming it was his fondest childhood memory. I was completely swept off my feet. I was convinced he was the one. But as the saying goes, if something seems too good to be true, it usually is. Slowly but surely, Mark started to change. The subtle digs began first, little cynical comments about my appearance or something I said. He would flirt with other women right in front of me, clearly trying to make me jealous. Of course, I would get upset, and he would apologize, temporarily reverting back to the loving, romantic person he had initially portrayed. But the outbursts became more frequent and more intense. I found myself constantly pleading with him, desperately trying to prove my love just to earn a sliver of the affection he once freely gave. It was exhausting, draining, and made me feel incredibly insecure. The moment I truly began to suspect something was terribly wrong was when I stepped out of the shower one day and caught him browsing an online dating site. When I confronted him, he tried to brush it off, claiming he only did it to see if I would get jealous and controlling. I didn't believe him for a second. Ironically, Mark was terrible with computers. Early in our relationship, he had called me, frustrated, asking for my help setting up an online chess account. The website required a slightly more complicated username and password than usual, and he quickly grew impatient. He ended up just telling me the username and password he wanted to use. It was a random detail, but I remembered it. So, on a whim, I decided to try that same username and password on the dating site I had caught him on. To my horror, it worked. I was in. What I found on his profile shattered my world. He wasn't just chatting with other women, he was actively meeting up with them and, based on the conversations, sleeping with them. And the worst part? He was sharing intimate details about our relationship, complaining about me, and listing all my supposed flaws. The betrayal cut deep. It felt like a physical blow. I sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Even though I knew our relationship wasn't perfect, I had been desperately clinging to those early days, those moments of intense happiness and connection. Now I was forced to face the painful truth. It had all been a lie. I cried for hours, a deep, gut-wrenching sorrow that seemed to wash over me in waves. But then something shifted inside me. The sadness slowly morphed into anger, a burning desire for justice. I decided I wasn't going to let him get away with this. I was going to make him pay. I created a fake dating profile, the first of many. I used an attractive photo and crafted a persona that I knew would appeal to him. It didn't take long for him to bite. We started chatting, and after a few days, he suggested meeting up. I feigned hesitation, playing hard to get. He insisted, and I reluctantly agreed to meet him at a large coffee shop downtown. On the day of the date, I went to the coffee shop, disguised in a hat and sunglasses, and found a table where I could observe him without being seen. A part of me, deep down, still hoped it was all a misunderstanding, a bad dream. 10 minutes before the scheduled meeting, I called him, pretending to be running late and asking if we could still meet. He said he couldn't, that he had an errand to run. My heart sank. I kept my eyes glued to the entrance, and sure enough, there he was. He walked in, looking around expectantly, and sat down at a table. At first, I felt a wave of panic rising within me, but I managed to calm myself down. He waited patiently for a few minutes, then started fidgeting and anxiously scanning every woman who walked through the door. Then, as if by some divine intervention, a woman walked in who looked strikingly similar to the picture I had used on my fake profile. He immediately approached her, saying something. She brushed him off, but he persisted. Eventually, she became agitated and told him to leave her alone. He waited for another half an hour, growing increasingly frustrated before finally giving up and leaving. That afternoon, I sent him a message through the dating site, revealing that I had been the woman he approached, that I had seen him, found him physically unattractive, but lacked the courage to say so in public, so I faked not knowing who he was. I apologized profusely. He replied, saying it was okay, no hard feelings, but I knew better. Mark was incredibly self-aware and narcissistic. There was no way he was truly unbothered by the rejection, so I did it again, and again, and again. I created new profiles, each with different personas and backstories. Sometimes he would be stood up, left waiting at the bar or restaurant like a fool. Other times, the woman would reschedule at the last minute, only to stand him up again later. Sometimes, she would cancel altogether, citing some vague emergency. I orchestrated at least 10 of these disastrous dates. Each failed attempt fueled my satisfaction, watching him squirm and grow increasingly frustrated. Finally, I decided it was enough. I had made my point. It was time to end our relationship, but I wasn't going to let him off easy. I chose to break up with him in public, at a crowded restaurant we frequented. I told him it was over because he was a cheating son of a b. He, of course, denied everything, attempting to gaslight me and twist the story, painting me as the jealous, crazy girlfriend. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "All those failed dates, all me." I let the words hang in the air, watching the realization dawn on his face. He was stunned, speechless. He stammered, asking how I could have possibly done it. I simply told him his password and walked away, leaving him sitting there, humiliated and alone. A few months after the breakup, I received a lengthy email from Mark. In it, he confessed that what I had done was ingenious, that it proved I was the love of his life, and that he had completely lost the will for online dating because he both feared and hoped that every new woman he encountered was me. He begged me to reconsider, to give him another chance. I never responded to that email, nor to any of the subsequent attempts he made to contact me. Even now, years later, he still occasionally tries to reach out. But I have moved on. I am stronger, wiser, and more confident than I ever was before. I learned a valuable lesson about trust, betrayal, and the importance of standing up for myself. And while revenge may not be the healthiest of emotions, in this case, it was incredibly satisfying. It gave me the closure I needed to finally close that chapter of my life and move forward, a little scarred, but ultimately triumphant.